Welcome to Richer Soul, Alia Yasmin Khan. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
And I am excited for the conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
um, Growing up, I had a mother that worked very, very, very hard. I remember at one point, I grew up in New York City, and life is very challenging growing up in the inner city. It's not easy. And my father passed away when I was 11 years old, and that put a ton of burden onto my mom. And at one point, I remember her working 12 hours, 7 days a week in order to pay the bills and support life with me because it was New York and it was expensive. And it's very fascinating how these things kind of shape and groom you. She did all of that. At the same time, she had all these medical challenges. She was constantly sick. Her quality of life was just awful. And in my mind, I always had this like motivation. I started college and I left it. It was such a short whim, and I thought about it and I was like, this is not going to be the path for me because I need to earn money. We have to get out of this situation. And that was one of the things that I think really propelled me forward. And at a very young age, I was in my early 20s when I moved out of New York, and I moved her out of New York as well. And I really kind of took control. In my late teens, early 20s, I really kind of took control of my life and my destiny at that point. And I learned how to be the rock that I needed to be. And most of that was motivated in order to take care of her, because my mom was much older than I was. She had me later on in life, and because I had to be a support system to her, it developed these like coping mechanisms within me, that just kind of built me to be a lot stronger and a lot more resilient against challenges. In terms of money, it was trade time for money. And that was what I learned from her. And that was not the right system to learn. And so much of that has evolved for me. And the moment that that started to evolve, truly started to evolve, I would say goes back to 2018. I pretty much had meditation was always my method of processing and dealing with issues. So back in 2018, I had this moment, like I felt my entire brain flipped after this moment. I came out of the meditation and I saw the world completely inverted. Like I can't explain it. But duality became the most present thing that I could ever see and observe in the world. And the dualistic nature, I started to observe the dualistic nature of life, of human beings, of money, of everything. And I realized a lot of things that I didn't realize before, because in 2018, I was told that my mom only had 6 months left to live. And when that occurred, I think I really kind of took that to heart. And I really said, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do at this point? I'm trading, at this point, I'm trading time for money. And I said, what am I going to do? She's the most valuable thing to me right now. So what do I do at this point? I want to spend every minute of those 6 months. And I let go of the job. I let go of the career. I let go of everything. And I just immersed myself with her. And I realized something that was so fundamentally true that I didn't realize. I was not the creator of money in my life. That came from a divine source. And it's interesting because I had saved up, and what I'd saved up, I turned around and invested in my first investment property during that time. And that investment property paid my bills. And starting to understand that shifted shifted everything, the way I looked at money, the way I looked at so many things. And throughout the next few years, just a massive evolution in the way that I looked at life, the way that I looked at, and the way that I valued what was important. Family being, one of the most valuable things to me, and being able to spend time with loved ones being the most valuable thing to me. And I said, what is the most valuable thing to other people? It's that. It's having those moments. It's not about trading time for money. And so, because I had understood this, I built this into the intuitive ascending mind program so that people could start to understand this on a bigger level. And the intuitive ascending mind program is what laid the foundation for Sublime Knowledge. So when I launched Sublime Knowledge, this is the program that transformed so many lives. And when people kind of grasped what I was teaching, they started to understand when it came to money, I am the manager of money. The job doesn't manage me. I manage the job or the task or the career. It's mine to take ownership of and manage. And when it comes to health, there's certain systems that we have to put in place in order to feel healthy and be performing at higher levels and eating the right diet and exercise and all of those great things. And then when it comes to love, having self-love and confidence is the most important thing in order to create this system for yourself, because without the self-love you don't have a desire to build this for yourself. So establishing, the right levels of understanding in the mind, in the subconscious mind, and making that autonomous behavior be your baseline behaviors is what today I help people to do.
Very interesting. So, was the your mother stayed in New York? Was there a reason she didn't want to leave New York to find a more reasonable place to live, or
Well, she moved a little bit after I moved. I moved first and then she moved after, but convincing her to move was very difficult. And I think when we're set into a certain paradigm, we love our comfort zones and we hate breaking out of them. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges with getting her to move. But eventually she did move, and I was grateful for that.
how do you get people out of their comfort zone and get them to take action?
It's through the process of rewiring the subconscious mind. It's continuously allowing them to understand how their conscious mind works, how their unconscious mind work, and how their subconscious mind works. Once you've rewired, and it works for every area of your life. Once you've rewired yourself to be productive in that area, you cannot unlearn what's wired into the subconscious. Some people are born into the environment where they're wired perfectly for what they're going to do, and some are not. And for the ones that are not, they have to spend time to reprogram the autonomous mind, the subconscious mind. And once they invest the time in themselves in doing that, then when everything's autonomous, then they will always be in a system, even when it comes to earning money or whatever it is. That's a wired that's programmed into the subconscious mind. And once that area has been rewired to that amount, they're able to push forward and always be within that paradigm. Now, when they're ready to break that paradigm and go to the next level, there is another step in rewiring to take them up to the next level. So it's a continuous, it's an infinite growth, basically. It's an infinite growth, but once you understand what needs to change, then the growth becomes easier.
When you have clarity on where you're going or what you want, it is much easier to achieve that. That is very, very true. Um, what was that big flip like for you with money? Was it just the real estate, or was there something else that went along with that?
It was actually understanding multiple sources of income and understanding the ability to set up those structures. I think that it was the game changer for me. It was understanding that I no longer needed to trade time for money, but I was forced to that point. And, my advice to individuals is don't wait until you're forced to that point. Be proactive about it if you have the opportunity to. Don't be forced to the point in which you have to make that decision, because those years that you lose with loved ones, you will never get them back.
No, you won't. Um, how did things turn out with your mother?
She passed away 3 years later, so she actually lived for a lot longer. And I think that came as a result of just love. Like I really think that came from, like, attention and love, and spending time with her and doing those things that I always wanted to do, and getting to a space of just beautiful unconditional love with her, unconditional forgiveness, and just this beautiful space that I got to with her through that process, I think really shed a lot of light into my life and helped me to evolve and helped me to understand how fundamental love and compassion actually is, and how they really are the building blocks for everything else, health as well as wealth.
Interesting. And where do you think most people are stuck in that whole process? Like, what prevents them from moving forward or making the change?
Fear, anger, worry, doubt. That, that's really where it stands from. Fear. If I don't have my job, where's money going to come from? Anger. Oh, I have to take care of somebody else. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be so mad at the world right now. I have to give up my life to do this. Because people are very self absorbed and they don't understand love and compassion. And love and compassion is being in service to others. And that's what actually gives you higher levels of happiness. And but they have a me sort of space that they live in, where they feel like they have to take care of me first. And in taking care of others, you're actually taking care of you first. That's the reality of it.
Interesting. So, was this you had a revelation, but how quickly did things change from that?
When that changed, I think everything changed almost instantaneously. To be completely transparent, when that happened, I thought I was going to die. Like, it was that type of experience that I thought that, like, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I was waking up in the middle of the night with these ideas, writing things down, and all of these ideas framed what turned into the intuitive ascending mind program. But to go back, so let's go back and see what started the framing, or even the revelation that we can call it. Um, when I went into meditation, I went in with a question. And the question was, I felt overwhelmed. So the question was, what do I need to learn? What do I need to know to get through this? This feels so overwhelming. What do I need to know to get through this? And almost as though I set up universe, source, God, almost as if I set up that that mentally enabling question to be answered is the result of what happens. So I think everything starts with intention. But we have to understand what it is intentionally we're asking for. And because I went in with that, I need answers. What do I need to learn? And I was willing to learn, because there's a willingness to learn. I think I was given that insight, that revelation, for a lack of better words, and that thing that would shift and change my entire world in those few months.
Very interesting. So, you wrote a book. What inspired you to write the book Succeeding in Business in Any Market with your co-author Brian Tracy?
So, working with Brian was a phenomenal experience. Brian is wonderful at the knowledge that he knows and conveys. Um, One of the things that he said to me that really changed my life was, write down 10 goals, write it down. And just as I wrote those goals down, it created a sense of structure and actually organized my mind to focus on what was most important. He also tells you to go through and revise your goals, and focus on what's important to you. And that simple process personally changed my life. So when I had the opportunity to spend more time with him and learn even more from him, I was beyond ecstatic to do so, because bringing systems like that and organizing the mind is the foundation of what I want everybody to understand. Most people live life with a very chaotic mind in which the physical world is deciding what they should think, whether it be the algorithms through, whatever social media platforms they're scrolling through all day long, or whatever the case is. They are allowing the outside physical world to dictate their inner thoughts, feelings, emotions, actions. Now, if you can shut yourself down from that outer world and you can go within and you're able to ignite higher levels of consciousness when you go within and you're able to understand what is your life purpose. I think part of the thing that I really understood was that taking care of my mom was my life purpose. It was part of my life purpose. It was something that I was assigned to do. And in that moment, our life purpose can change from one area to another area to another area throughout the course of our life. And that assignment, I had to take on that assignment. So I was going to take on that assignment and do the best possible job I could do with it. And that was my intention going into it. Now, what others can kind of grasp from my situation is that sometimes life will throw at you some very difficult challenges, and you have to build yourself with resilience and strength and inner strength. The strength comes from within. It really doesn't come from the outside world. I didn't read a book that changed my life, although some people have. I didn't do anything else. I went to my inner self. I went to my higher self. I said, what do I need to learn? There's two sources of knowledge. There's the type of knowledge you will get from the physical world, which you go to school, you pass tests, and you get knowledge through that way. And it's a very valid way. But there's also knowledge that comes from within, and it's inner knowledge, it's higher knowledge. And that knowledge is a lot more rewarding because that knowledge is more tied into what your destination is in this physical existence. That knowledge gives you guidance as to what it is you need to do, what areas you need to grow in, and how to make the transition and how to have belief and faith in what you're doing to transition through difficult times.
I think there's a couple things that I see people struggle with. So the first is turning off the noise, right? People seem addicted essentially to the noise. And learning to step away from that, I think, is extremely important. But the second thing is to create the plan and set your goals. And I find a lot of people are afraid to create their idea of what they want their life to be. And I don't know why people struggle with this. Um, Even when you give them the tools to say, here's a simple tool to create a life plan, people feel scared. And I don't know why that is. Do you?
Most of the fear is instilled in the younger part of their life. I feel like fear is generally instilled in individuals when they are pure subconscious mind, when their brain waves are in theta in the younger part of their life. When that occurs, that's where, if somebody said, don't do this, or sometimes they do something and they fail at it, and that failure, they just carry that because the emotion. Here's the thing about memories. Memories are only captured in our minds based on the emotional attachment that is associated with the memory. So if there's a high emotional attachment, then the experience is bonded to the mind. If there's a low or no or neutral emotional attachment, there's nothing bonded. So one of the ways that I encourage people to look at this is like, 3 weeks ago, what did you have for breakfast? You probably wouldn't remember. Now, if 3 weeks ago, something traumatic happened, maybe you had a car accident in the morning, God forbid, or maybe you had, or maybe it was your birthday, or maybe it was something that was eventful that had emotions attached to it. You would remember exactly what you ate for breakfast, where you went, what you did, and every detail. So it's that emotion that traps it into our memory. Now, you asked me about people that have fear. And to bring it back to that is to understanding what memories they have that have emotions trapped that instill fear, because their memory and imagination work similarly. They're exactly the same because we really live in present moment. We have memory, which is reflection of the past, and imagination, which is what moves us forward. They work exactly the same, but most people spend their entire day imagining the memory from the past and trying to avoid that from ever happening to them again. So they're trying to protect themselves. They're in survival mode. They're trying to protect themselves. They won't engage with future imagination more than they do with memory. And that's the pivotal point, that if they make that adjustment, they leave memory behind. They bring attention to imagination on a consistent and regular basis. This is why things like vision boards and things like that work so effectively. It's because if you're bringing your attention to the same thing, and Brian Tracy saying, write it down, I go another step further. I say, write it down, and write it down like 7 times, 8 times, write it over and over again until you've rewired the subconscious mind. Because you're trying to first identify what's trapping you in that cycle with fear, worry, doubt, depression, whatever it might be. And then you're breaking away from that cycle that you're trapped in by engaging in a new set of imagination, feelings, experiences, things that you actually want to experience. And the moment you get really good at doing this is the moment that life aligns with the imagination. So what blows my mind is, why do people spend so much time thinking about memories of the past that do not move them forward and instead traps them almost like shackles holding them down, and not engage enough in imagination? And I think that this information just needs to be taught to more people so that they can understand how this faculty works, how our mental faculties work. If you notice in the book, I spent quite a bit of time diving into each mental faculty so people can kind of understand, how do our mental faculties really work, and are they serving us? Because our mental faculties are wonderful tools. Just like we have tools in the physical world, which is sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing, in the mental world, we have perception, reasoning, memory, imagination, intuition, and will. And those are our tools to use to navigate the mental world. So the greater we get at understanding how the mental world happens, works, the better we get at creating the physical world. Now it's not the physical world happening to us anymore. We're the instrument that's creating the physical world. And the moment we can bridge that, we can identify, okay, you have fear. It's an understandable emotion or feeling. I get it. But where did the fear come from? And is that truth? Because that's based off of a perception that you may have experienced. So is it based on truth, or is it based on something that absolutely doesn't impact your life in the true sense?
And in the book, you had a whole bunch of formulas to remember. I'm
Yes,
just going to whip through them and then let's talk about them.
sure.
So the first was thought plus feeling equals emotion.
Yes,
Emotion is energy in motion. And then thought plus feeling plus action equals attitude. And then affirmation plus repetition equal results. And affirmation plus emotion equals permanent change. So, how do we take all these formulas to bring about these changes?
so first starts, of course, with identifying. And the first thing you want to identify is the thoughts. There's a method to be the observer of your thoughts. And this method comes through meditation. When you're sitting there by yourself and you're able to observe your predominant thoughts. Everything starts with thoughts. So I'm going to just use the brain as the receptor of the thoughts, because that's really what the brain does. It receives the thoughts. So everything starts in thought. Feeling comes from the heart, and feelings expressed through the body. If a thought ignites a certain feeling within you, you have created an emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. So if let's think of emotion maybe as a car. There's one piece to that formula that I've kind of evolved upon. The fuel that drives the car of emotion is belief. It's the fuel you're going to pour into what gets you to the destination. So we've got thought, feeling, emotion, and the fuel is belief. Now, the emotion is what is creating the reality that you're experiencing. So if the emotions are high and they're positive and they're great, then you're creating great results on a regular basis. If the emotions are bad, fearful, anger, depression, then you're creating those experiences over and over again for yourself, because the belief that you have is that you're not worthy of the greater experience. So the belief is pushing those emotions forward. What you are Your attitude comes from your actions. So if we have a great attitude about life, we're taking better action in the things that we're doing, and we're seeing the results. And attitude, you can almost walk up to a person, and attitude is almost like the energy ball that you see around them, and you've determined within a short period of time, do I like this person's attitude, or does this person not have a good attitude? We determine that within the first few seconds of being around that person. But what created that person's attitude exists in the physical world. So what created that person's attitude is their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, their beliefs. And that's the backstory as to what got to the attitude. So when you want to make the changes, you have to change the thoughts. So that's where affirmations come in. Affirmations are you affirming the types of thoughts you want to think and the type of life you want to experience. And when you get into affirmations, you're rewriting your story. You're rewriting the outcome. And as you're rewriting that repetitiously, you will fall into that system. Once you get emotion and belief involved, you will fall into the system of the new life you're looking to create for yourself. We're constantly in creation mode. We're constantly shedding skin. If you think billions of skin cells leave our body on a regular basis, we're constantly evolving. Our minds need to constantly evolve. There's nothing worse than seeing someone whose mind is stagnant when their body is continuously evolving.
I'm wondering how many people are stagnant versus how many people are actually evolving and moving forward.
Probably 95%.
And I'm guessing if you're on social media or if you're stuck on TV, if you're in those types of things, they're kind of locking you in more often than not.
Yeah. You know what a key indicator is of stagnation? It's depression.
Hmm. Interesting.
Depression is suppression of expression. So if we think of depression like you are stagnant because you are unhappy with your current situation, but you don't have a desire to fully step into the expression of your life, of yourself, in order to release the depression.
And that's probably why people who are depressed can't see a path forward.
Yeah, yep. It sure is. There's a there is a formula. I do something called mapping of the mind. And when I map the mind, I show people where depression actually resides. It actually resides in a space that is very ego driven and self absorbed, in which, when I say self absorbed, I mean we're so concerned about me and for me that we're not able to be in service. And what we are created to be is creators in life. So we are created for the process of creation. And embedded in our minds, our marvelous minds, is the information that we need to be in creation and creatively do the things we need to do while we're here on earth. So if we can start to understand that, then we tap into the mind more effectively. Depression will not set in because you will just be motivated every single day because you are working with your higher self to satisfy your goal, to satisfy your life goal, your life purpose.
When you work with clients, how quickly can they see change?
It depends on the client and it depends on the individual. However, for the most part, when they start to understand, and the more exposure that they get to what I teach, when they start to understand what I'm sharing with them, incrementally they start to make the changes. Repetition yields results. So every time, they have the opportunity to be immersed, or how committed they are to the change will determine how effectively they change. I've seen clients that take it seriously. I've seen clients that take it less seriously. The ones that take it seriously honestly master it and are able to evolve on their own without much of my help, because they understand how their mind works. They understand what area they need to work on when they see a problem, because their awareness becomes hyperactive. They become aware of the encounters they have in their physical world. They tie it back to their mind. They say, oh, I did have a memory of that. Oh, I was thinking about that. And now here I am encountering this situation. So they start to break the ties that they have emotionally that's trapped in the memory, and then they're able to move into imagination and stick consistently in imagination. So where they're at today is a reflection of the last 6 months or the last year, or however long they've been creating stuff for. Now, we're always in creation mode, whether we know it or not. Now, today, if we're looking to make a change for tomorrow, then we have to engage in imagination more than those trapped memories that are not serving us.
Why would someone come to you for coaching if they weren't serious about doing something?
So in some cases, I've had mothers sign up their children for coaching.
Okay.
That's the why that would happen. Other than that, I think for the most part, people do have a desire for personal growth and development, and that is probably the main reason that drives people to me.
Okay. And that actually makes sense that if somebody else is signing you up for something, you're doing it because you have to, not because you want to.
Yeah.
Um, and I've noticed that with yeah, you can't, you have to make your own choice. And that's why I think a lot of times with programs, especially when employers send people to do stuff, if they're not, if the people aren't bought in, they're not going to do well, unfortunately. And so you have to make sure that that buy-in is there.
It's a slightly different dynamic when I coach teams and I coach executives, because I what I've noticed is that even the team players in those realms, they actually get intrigued by the stuff that I teach quite a bit, more so than the parent child dynamic. And one of the reasons for, I think, that's the disconnect, is that employees actually, they want to produce better, they want to do better, they want to keep their jobs, they want these are things they want the stability of the income that they're getting. So they have more desire to learn because they want to be better at what they're doing. With parent child dynamics, children, through most of their teenage years, are developing their ego. They're not developing anything else, and it's the egoic clash And there's three main characteristics that are developed in the ego. It's the I am, the I want, and the I know. And it's that sort of space that the child is trying, that they're trying to define in themselves. It's who am I really? Like, I'm trying to find my path. What makes me different? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? So there's a lot of resistance from the way the parent sees the child and how the child is looking to develop its own view of itself. And the I know, it's that, I mean, how many teenagers know it all? So they don't want to, they want to discover things for themselves. They don't want to be sent, to be told this is what you need to work on, or that's what they want to uncover that for themselves.
Yeah, I found with kids, it's a lot easier when they pull you versus when you pushing them.
Yes,
And so it's just creating the opportunities for them to find those places to pull you along, and giving them the permission
yeah,
and the support to do those as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes, a lot of times, parents have the best intention in their hearts. They want to see their children go a certain direction or do a certain thing, or maybe follow their path into a certain career. And that's not always what's best for the child. The child needs to find their own path.
Correct. Yeah. Too often the parent is overbearing on that situation and it's not helpful. And if the kid listens, I think 20 or 30 years later, they wake up and go, what the hell am I doing with my life?
Yeah, yeah,
This isn't what I wanted. Right. They get stuck. I think that's less so today than it was probably 50 years ago.
I agree with
Um,
that. Yeah.
the world has changed in that space. One of the things that you talk about the book is synchronizing thoughts and emotions. Can you expand on that a little?
So, as a point of reference, let's just say a recent client of mine, I'll share this with you. Her words are, no matter what I do, like, I just feel like my business isn't growing. Well, that's a thought. That's a thought going on up here. That's creating emotions that are feeling bad and feeling unsuccessful. So if she could understand that uttering those words shows me her thoughts and shows me her feelings, in that moment, I can say that thought is not going to get you to your goal. And one of the things that I always encourage people to reflect upon themselves is that thought going to get me to my goal? That is a staple statement that I use, because you can't say you want something, but then your thoughts and your feelings are not in alignment with that thing that you want. If you want to grow your business, then you think of ways to grow your business that you have not tapped those resources as yet. So it's, how can I open up my awareness? This is a mentally enabling question. How can I open up my awareness to more areas to grow my business? Now, I don't have to answer that question for me. I can ask that question and just wait for the answer to come to me, because this is what's magical about intuition. It's one of our mental faculties. And when we train ourselves to ask the right questions, intuition lets us know it's there to answer the question. And we're actually super guided through life if we know how to get into the right flow of it. There's incredible guidance that's available to us that comes from within us, but we have to ask the right questions, and we have to not take inventory of what we see in the physical world, and we have to internalize and know how to work with intuition effectively, how to ask the right question and then listen, and then when we hear it, act on it. Take action right away. There's no time for delay when you see something that's revealing itself to you. I've just simply thought about something, and someone came along almost like within a few hours that was exactly what I thought about. Exactly, we're the perfect fit to the puzzle. Now, this happens to me over and over again. And if it happens for me, it happens for every other human being. They just don't know how to access it. So it's a matter of mentally enabling questions again, and understanding that when you have a thought, it's a powerful thing. It's the start. You're at the starting point for the race. Like the race starts with thought, observing the thought. Then the emotions and the feelings get involved. That's the next step. The feelings and emotions, sorry, not emotions, then feelings. Feelings first, then emotions get involved. And then belief is what's fueling it. So sometimes they may have the thoughts, feelings, emotions down, but then they don't believe in themselves and they can't fuel it forward because they lack belief or they lack faith in their ability to do it. So that's another layer that's in there is belief. You have to believe that you're going to get the answer. You have to believe. So self-doubt needs to fade away. And this is all, it's repetitiously trained behavior in order to make these changes.
And that kind of takes us back to the beginning because I don't think most people think about what they want. They're not clear, they don't write it down. And once you have that clarity, I have found it is so much easier to move towards that direction because you know where you're going. In which case, you can then ignore everything that doesn't take you there,
Yes.
which then clears a lot of mental clutter because you're no longer making all these decisions. You're just saying, is that taking me closer to where I want to go? Yes or no? And then you just go that way.
It really is that simple. There's such a beautiful fluidity to life that I think, and I know I say this with genuineness because even through transition of what should be a grieving point when my mom actually passed away in 2021, you would think for the closeness that we had together, that I would have been spun into depression or something, as a result of it. None of that occurred. And the reason why that didn't occur is because I honored the life purpose. I realized that that was my life purpose at that moment, and I honored the purpose. And the only question I sat with once that had passed, because I had really had given up everything. I hadn't been on vacation. I was completely dived into taking care of her and doing everything that she needed. So I surrendered my life to taking care of her during that time. When that time passed, I stopped and I said, okay, what can I do to take care of Aaliyah now? Because Aaliyah needs a little bit of love now that she's given so much. And in that moment, I kind of almost took the year off and I traveled and I just said, these are the things I wanted to do that I didn't get the opportunity to do. And now it's time for me to do. So I took the year off and during the travels and during, those moments, I said, what is my next step? What am I supposed to do next? And starting Sublime Knowledge was the next step for me because I said, you know what? I knew how to process this. I knew how to get through these difficult times. I understand how my mind works. I understand how to control it to a certain degree. And it's hard to control your mind because it doesn't take long for discourse to seep into the mind. It takes maybe scrolling on social media for about a half hour to sow discourse into the mind. It doesn't take very long. And once discourse is sown into the mind, you go down the rabbit hole of, disinformation or disconnection from yourself, really. You go down that rabbit hole, you're just rewiring your mind to a realm that you don't need to be in. You are either going to be a consumer or you're going to be a creator. And we need more creators in this life. We are at a point where creation energy has brought us to a beautiful space today with all the technology and all the things that we have. We're in a beautiful space today. And if we have more creators working at full potential of their life purpose and their goals and what they're designed to do by understanding that, then who knows what else we could be doing.
So true. The only thing I'll disagree with you on is 2 minutes on social media. And I think you're you're like sucked in and going negative. It doesn't
Right.
take
An hour.
long. Yeah, yeah, half an hour and it's over. I think it happens a lot quicker than that. And that's just life and it's okay, right? You have to yeah. I think people need to decide what they want and then put up part of that is putting up barriers between you and bad habits. We're creatures of habit. The easier something is to do, the less friction, the more apt you're going to do it. So, you know, even as simple as not having the app on your phone makes it harder to sign in. Most people won't go through the friction.
Yeah.
They have to have a strong desire to get through the friction. And the more you can create friction to bad habits, the easier it is to prevent them from happening. And you've just got to figure out what you want to change and then either put up a fence or take down a fence, whether it's plus or minus.
Yeah. One of the questions I ask, most of my clients, I say, if today's your last day, did you do everything you wanted to do? And I let them sit with that for a little bit and just think about it. And for the most part, they're like, no, I don't want today to be my last day. I have so many things I want to do and so many places I want to see. I said, well, if that's the case, those things you want to do and those places you want to see need to become goals. And they need to be, they're not just there for inspiration. Inspiration is another thing that enters our mind. Inspiration comes from the spirit within. Aspiration is the goal that we channel that spirit to get to a goal. Aspiration is the goal. So the conversion of inspiration to aspiration is what I want most people to understand that they need to do, because time is limited. And ultimately, even if you look at wherever you're at today, you say, oh my God, I don't know how those years went by so fast. And because we tend to say that, we need to realize that those years have to be meaningful. And those years have to carry experiences that were meaningful. And those years should not be trapped in a cycle that steals our light. It should be in a cycle that illuminates our light, makes us brighter, makes us vibrate higher.
So true. Is there anything that we should have talked about today that we didn't get a chance to?
Um, I think we did touch quite a few. we dug in there quite deep. Yeah, I'm grateful. There's always lots to talk about. I could dive into every single section that I shared with you and spend hours on it.
Well, people will have to dig further if that's what they particularly want. Today, we're opening the door and kind of showing a path. And, you know, one of the things I have found is that life is pretty simple. For most people, doing simple is hard. We make it more complicated and we look for complicated solutions to life instead of just doing the simple ones that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't realize how much our beliefs frame our reality.
Oh, they're massive because I'm in tune to when people make those comments like under their breath. I'm like, oh, there's somebody locked into a pattern that's not going to change. And you can hear it in those little words. And you can also see it. And that's not something that I'm so tuned into. I guess I have to start. You can notice it with little ways that people do things. And some people are very good at noticing those minute changes. And when they notice those minute changes, they realize that something's going on. And I am not a fan of gambling. I just don't enjoy it. But I think that's one of the skills of a good poker player
Oh, yeah.
is to read the table.
Yeah.
And and they read behaviors. You don't need to talk, right? You can watch if you tune yourself into that.
I think a good coach has to be able to, first of all, listen really well. They say 2 ears and one mouth, probably should be 4 ears and one mouth. Listen really well. Observe the behaviors, because the behaviors are reflection, like I said, of the thoughts and the feelings. So observe those things, because those are coming from another source, a deeper source. And then you will know what needs to be addressed, what thoughts are leading to the behaviors or the attitude, and then you can go forward from that point.
Makes a lot of sense. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Feeling fulfilled and intentional every single day.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
To feel fulfilled and be intentional.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Discover you.
If people would like to learn more about you or the book, where can they do that?
SublimeKnowledge.com. We have the book on there, and then you can also learn more about me at AliaYasminKhan.com. I do speaking events and I do events, so that's a great way to know more about what I do and go from there.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
Thanks for checking out this unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can find the full episode along with all the back episodes at richersoul.com. This podcast is brought to you by Profit Comes First, where we help business owners to have a more profitable and growing business so they can live the life of their dreams. Check that out as well wherever you listen to all this content.